My headline for the DOGE effort, I would say, is opportunity missed or opportunity lost. You had things like the probationary folks being terminated. Well, now you've got a bunch of court cases clogging up the system. You've got a bunch of people on administrative leave who were essentially terminated. And those people on administrative leave, they could be doing productive work right now.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of the Optimized podcast brought to you by VisibleThread. I am your host, Jeff Shapiro, partner at CohnReznick, and I'm thrilled to bring you another awesome episode, a fabulous guest recommended to me by several friends of mine within industry, Erv Koehler. Welcome to the Optimized podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. Great to be here.
So thrilled you're here. So I want to give a brief bio on Erv. Erv comes to us with over 22 years of experience at GSA alone, and then has a bunch of years experience before that. He's the former assistant commissioner for the General Supplies and Services. At one point in his career in GSA, I think it's important to note that he was the head of contracting activity as a regional commissioner. So having that prestigious title, sure, we talk about head of contracting authority. That's and when you read FAR, that's a pretty big deal to have that authority. So I didn't have that on the list of topics to talk about, but I thought our audience would want to know that you bring that kind of experience. And then Erv has been in the industry as well, serving a number of years at LMI with contracting officer experience as well as program management. So lots of varied insight, Erv. Welcome.
Good to be here, Jeff.
So, all right, so let's get started. I like to start with an easy softball question. And that today is, not everyone goes into university thinking, hey, I can't wait to be heavily involved in federal procurement. So what's your story on how you fell into federal acquisitions?
So I had two great mentors, Roosevelt Smith and Eileen Garnett, in my first job. And my first job was actually processing travel vouchers for a company called DMJMHTV. And Roosevelt and Eileen sat next to me in contracts. They were a person short, and they asked me to do Davis-Bacon payroll reviews. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, I had worked my way maybe a quarter of the way through a pile that was probably 16 feet long and 3 feet tall. And they said, hey, Erv, have you ever thought about being in contracts? I said, I don't know what that means. And they said, well, it means a $3,000 raise and you don't have to do travel vouchers anymore. And I said, well, sign me up. I said, but how did I get this job? They said, everybody hates Davis-Bacon payrolls. And if you can do that dutifully, we know you can be a contracts person. And so that's how I got my start. They took me under their wing and showed me the ropes. And from there, I took off and, got my master's certificate and other things. So like everybody else, there's always a weird story. And mine was thanks to Roosevelt and Eileen.
All right, so I'm not going to be offended that you went outside of wanting to become an accountant. We really could use some really strong folks on this side as well, but that's okay. That's okay. I do not judge. I don't blame you. Having processed the number of travel expense vouchers in my day, I get it. it. So, well, we're really glad that you transferred over and bring a lot of experience now on the acquisition start. So lots to talk about. I think I'm going to start from a larger perspective, and then we can get some more narrowed perspective from your recent experience being at the General Services Administration. So it's hard not to start with the RFO, the Revolutionary FAR Overhaul, or FAR 2.0, or whatever name you want to give it. But there's a lot of changes to the regulation, and doing it quicker than ever, with very little public input. How do you see that's going thus far? Do you like what you see?
Yeah, I think so far so good. I think it's a sort of a maintenance of an aircraft is the way I think about it. You get your routine maintenance, FAR updates, and this is a major service, major overhaul. You're taking the thing apart, putting it back together. the timing is probably pretty decent with the changes in technology. Some of the language is just a little bit outdated. And so I think going through, cleaning it up, taking out some of the items that may not be required by law, just reasonable choices in my mind. I think where it's going to get a little bit stickier is when you get down to the items that are required by law. There's a lot of public policy built into it that are legislatively based. I don't think those change as easily as people think, but I still think it's a reasonable idea going forward. And so far, the changes seem pretty straightforward and relatively consistent with what exists today.
I love it. So talk a little more about, is this the best way to do this? I mean, they didn't have much of a choice. The new administration really campaigned on a more efficient government. And so they're trying to deliver on that. Having seen a little bit of this on the inside, how do you effectuate this kind of level of change and have it done right? I mean, this isn't the first time we've tried to tinker with federal procurement practices to make it more streamlined.
Yeah, I think two pieces of advice I hope they're listening to is the workforce. The workforce needs to have some input on what makes their lives miserable. I hope it's not too policy driven because the policymakers and the people at the end of the line don't always see eye to eye. And as much as this is kind of a cool thing to do, sort of that big maintenance overhaul, I think there's some other things they could be doing as well. There's a large number of internal policy guidance out there that stem from IG audits, corrective action plans, things of that nature. And those sort of get layered and layered and layered over the years. And the templates, although they seem good, suddenly you have 10 templates and they're 29 pages, and it's just a lot to get through. So for me, as much as the FAR overhaul is exciting to a certain extent, I think from a workforce perspective, looking at those internal documents, those internal policies would be a faster and better way to go in the short term. And that's really something I hope people are thinking about, because the workforce right now, hey, at GSA, they're being asked to do twice as much with half as many people. That's a tall order, under any circumstance. And so for that to be accomplished in a reasoned way, I think getting rid of some of those internal policies that are maybe a little more burdensome and offering a little bit more flexibility to that workforce would go a long way towards balancing the increased work, the lower workforce. Plus, you've got new things coming out every day. There's just a lot going on there for the workforce to deal with. And I think my joke on the FAR was, they said, oh, it's going to be so X pages less. I said, well, Jeff, I'll bet you $100 right now that the new FAR plus the agency guidance that goes with it will probably exceed the number of pages in the FAR today. And so I hope there's really that right balance between what the workforce needs and how we can really do as much as we can to streamline for them.
Yeah, I totally understand and agree. There's a lot of talk about risk tolerance, right? I mean, a lot of what has become, how acquisition has been shaped has been as a result of mistakes made, whether it's, the so many competitive acquisitions being protested over the years, the improper practices by contracting officers. It's just all these layers of protections end up being put into place to avoid the favoritism, the conflicts of interest, far known controlled interest issues. I mean, you name it. It's to get it perfect and enable the risk-taking behavior, where I think is where the administration wants this to take this. Like, hey, treat this like a commercial buying organization. Problem is, there's no commercial buying organization that uses taxpayer dollars to fund its activities. So there's a big difference. So I don't know, any of your perspective on all that?
Yeah, the workforce risk tolerance is directly related to the boss's risk tolerance. So when someone like me shows up and I am much more tolerant of reasonable risk that is thought through in a reasoned way, I always tell folks, you don't have to come up with the same idea I do. I need you to think through it, have a good reason for what you did, and then go ahead and do it, and I've got your back. And that really gets the workforce excited, and it's nice for me. I have a very technical background in contracts as well, so I can appreciate what they're going through. Not everyone who is an SES or a head of contract activity always came up through the ranks and has that technical competence, so they get a little bit nervous. So I feel like that was one advantage that I had with folks that really kind of helped ease their minds. And there are times when people would say, hey, Erv, I'm not signing that. And I said, okay, I'll sign it. And there was a process within GSA that allowed me to effectuate those actions. And again, it was a signal to the workforce, I'm not putting this risk on you and saying, hey, it's the contracting officer's discretion. I'm putting my own name on it. So when things like that begin to happen, you start to unleash the workforce to say, okay, now I know I have this backing. I think the second part of your question about, hey, let's buy commercial or be more commercial, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the question. In my last position, I bought commercial stuff every day. Blue-collar products and services, printers, tools, paper, those types of things. So it's the most commercial stuff you can get. What is not commercial about it? Hey, guess what? Most companies don't have to sign up to 33 reps in search saying that they comply with the following sets of, EEO, ADA, which are all very good and important things. At the same time, that doesn't happen in the commercial space. Also, when you're spending taxpayer dollars, as you alluded, there's a higher level of scrutiny and responsibility associated with it because, hey, you want to buy American first because those are American tax dollars. You want to put those controls in place. You want to make sure there's competition, that there's no conflicts of interest. And those are things that are absolutely important in the federal space, but they're also get in the way of, hey, why can't we just do it commercially? The last one, and I think what's hardest today, is when people, when the administrations, probably 5 or 6 administrations ago, realized they could really effectuate public policy through acquisition, that's when things got substantially more difficult, because now you're trying to drive policy decisions by whether it was, more ethanol under one administration, more electric under another administration, or those styles of trade-offs. DEIA is in, DEIA is out, green is in, green is out. Those are difficult things to deal with because you're fundamentally changing clauses that are built into regulation and policy. You're basically taking them out one at a time and then having to put them back in. And those are things that most public companies don't have to go through. They're focused on the bottom line, whether it's for the ownership or the shareholder, and they want to deliver the best they can. So they're less concerned about some of those activities. And there is I think it's noted, I think it's notable, and I think people need to acknowledge that it's not going to be fully commercial. Otherwise, it would be so unfair and so lopsided, it would just get a little bit out of hand. At least that's my perspective.
No, I appreciate that. Look, we've been trying to figure out, we being the general people who work in acquisition, in federal acquisition, how to do this faster, right? Bridge the valley of death. And, we had back not too long ago, the FASA, the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act, hopefully I got that right. We developed a more robust FAR Part 12. We have so many more options. We've been writing the rules to buy commercial for all these years. Why? I mean, is it this risk-taking thing that's keeping it in the way? Is it the culture? Is it the training? All the above? What's holding us all back?
Again, from my perspective, it really comes down to that public policy component. Okay. The workforce is there. The workforce is great. They'll do what you ask them to do, and they'll do as much as that you'll protect them, so to speak. Some of the challenges become, under some administrations, you say, hey, do more small business. What ends up happening is you have small businesses that become created that are resellers of large businesses, or there'll be prime sub-relationships that get created to fulfill that policy objective of supporting small business. Does that make the marketplace more efficient? No, I don't think that it does. Does it help small business? Absolutely. You have other people out there in the market that are, potentially competitors, but there's not enough manufacturing, in the country to make those small businesses grow. So everybody's a reseller of someone else. And how long does that chain get? And that's sort of one small example, but an important one, because it really does start adding more and more to the industrial base, which people say, hey, that's the greatest thing. It can be. It also can not be, because how many people do I need selling items from the National Industries for the Blind? Is 1,000 the right number? Yeah, I don't think so. But again, there's small businesses out there that make a living doing it. So, hey, good for them. And it's the right choice. But I think those styles of public policies are really what create some of the challenges we have, and they're all well intended. They're actually all probably solid ideas on their own. It's when you get that collective layering effect, one on top of the other on top of the other, that just makes it more difficult for the buyer just to go out and do it.
Yeah, totally get it. So you've alluded a bit to it. I think we can't skip over it. The challenges of a cutback workforce. A lot of seasoned veterans have recently left government. I'm boxing in a certain person now. And there's a lot of great experience that has left the door for whatever reason. And now you got a whole new workforce, a lot more green, potentially more technologically savvy. But is the emerging technology going to catch up fast enough to deal with that workforce compression? And oh, by the way, we're going to ask this one agency to take on the bulk of the activity. Something. I mean, in ideal world, can we fix this instantly? It just doesn't happen. It's a little more challenging than that. I love your perspective on all this.
I think your assessment is it's a little more challenging than that. I often would say if I had a bag of that pixie dust, I would be a lot more successful than I am.
Give me both.
But again, we'll give credit to the workforce that remains. The federal workforce is a resilient bunch. They always seem to find a way one way or another. And again, it's going to come down to, okay, if GSA is not going to go with resellers anymore, that marketplace shrinks by, a significant hundreds of vendors. Are they going to be able to withstand the calls to the Congress people, which is something that regularly happens? And that is a difficult thing to withstand. And that's why we kind of are where we are. And again, fully legitimate and reasonable. It's just a matter of which trade-offs are you going to make. When you get down to the other side of it, the memo that came out today, on the one hand, was saying, hey, let's consolidate everything at GSA, and let's also insource more technical capabilities following a period when X number of people were asked to leave or offered to leave in one way, shape, or another. It's just sort of an interesting paradox of, okay, where do we go from here? Because as much as artificial intelligence is a super exciting thing, I love it, I use it every day, it is also important to have people that understand, hey, how does this data actually work? How would you prompt the AI or teach the AI to do what it needs to do now? Right. And in some ways, most importantly, how do you know when this thing is wrong? Because you can really get some unusual results. And so, an old timer like me now, that's sort of the value that you have in a huge ways, because you've got the experiences, you know how to look at things and understand maybe when they're not tuned up just correctly. And then how far do you take it? I was funny. I just posted a comment on Chris Ham's one of his posts today, and he was saying, hey, we should use the NFL challenge concept for protests. And I said, we should go farther and then add a thing at the end that says, if the protester gets a follow-on, they have to take the lesser of their current price, the lesser of their proposed price, or the winner's price. So that way, hey, fair and reasonable for the government all around. But again, importantly for the workforce, the justification writes itself. We know we got a fair and reasonable deal because we took the lowest of the three best options that we had. It doesn't really incentivize somebody to do it from a pricing perspective, but it's those styles of things that we need to start building in to make it easier and easier for the rote things. And AI can certainly do some of that for us. It certainly can be super helpful for us. But again, there is some intellectual capacity today that is required to teach it and get it to that place. But yeah, that's certainly going to be helpful. It's just a matter of how fast you can deploy it. And again, how much risk are you willing to take? Because when you unleash the demon there, it really can go some different places and create some interesting results. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then will GSA start hiring at some point? Because there is this capacity that's necessary. They do need to insource some more stuff. But in the end, I got to put my faith in the folks that are left behind. A lot of good friends who are still there working hard to make this happen. And I have faith they'll find a way one way or another. But there will be some bumps because unless the workload goes down, meaning the number of contractors in the marketplace or how the work is done, today it's sort of an unsolvable equation. But it can be figured out, and I certainly have confidence they will.
Yeah, we've had lots of challenging times where this isn't the first time there's been a significant cutback to federal workforce or just to the overall federal budget. And so, yes, I don't disagree that they'll figure it out. Just that, will it be as fast as what the administration hopes it to be, or, the rest of us citizens who wanted this big change, right? Hey, change the rules. Now you should be able to procure everything within a matter of days, and that used to take years. Like, it's a lot more to it. There's a culture change that'll need to happen in addition to this learning the technologies. I mean, what you alluded to with the AI, there's been several recent GAO protests launched, usually by internal counsel, then an external counsel. So I won't put any of those law firms at risk here, but they had AI help them research case law. And when they went to present, why, their argument as to why the corrective action is needed, the judge would come back and said, these cases you cited don't exist. So, the appeals, the GAO board there is getting really frustrated with several. It hasn't been an isolated occurrence. It's happened several times. And yeah, can you imagine something like that happen on the procurement cycle? All of a sudden you find out that the AI was somehow directing itself to some kind of preferred vendor, unintentionally. And we find out the LLM was somehow programmed that way. It just, God help us, right? We don't need that kind of, problem going on. And so, yeah, we got to be really, really careful and to be able to identify, hey, are these results indeed taking in the logic we hope for and putting out the results that we expected? And I get it. I agree with you, taking care of all the rote things, taking care, something as simple as, paying, making sure progress payments meet contract terms. Like,
right.
That should be pretty easy. And whether or not you're getting the 80% notification at the right time, and then, putting out a letter that says, hey, listen, you were late in this notification, this is what we're going to do about it. There's so many things you can do in that world. But then when it starts getting to that risk-based decision-making that you alluded to earlier, I don't know if AI is the best tool to do that, at least not right now.
I would tend to agree. It'll certainly get there. I think it was the Google had put out that their AI now started writing its own stuff without being prompted, and that's certainly another place, another dimension for us to consider going forward. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Eventually, it'll get there for everything. But the rote stuff is the things today that, if you could fill out justification forms, which is one of the things we regularly did in my last position, the contracting officers nearly cried because, a little RPA, this isn't AI or anything fancy, but a little RPA with 20 elements filled out would write it for them. And, you knew it was going to be correct because you did the inputs. So there's a lot to be done in that space. I totally agree. And if we can get rid of some more of that work for them, or say, hey, we're not even going to do it that way anymore. But anyway, it's certainly exciting times, and I look forward to the future.
Yeah, don't you think that would make the 1102 workforce more appealing? Like, I'm going to take out your let me look up whether or not you're allowed to do that in the contract. And we can just say, hey, AI, in contract such and such, is a contractor allowed to claim overtime? And it'll be answered in seconds instead of minutes. And so all that terrible, boring stuff that drives a lot of the workforce out, and then, hey, I need you to focus on business decisions. That sounds like a lot more interesting job to me.
Totally.
Anyways, all right. So let's shift a little bit. I wanted to talk about, we've heard a lot of folks wanting to shift to results-based outcome contracting in some way. We just keep hearing, oh, these big integrators, they just want to put their butts in seats and charge their hours and make the profits. And, folks get really chummy with them in the program offices all throughout the government. And it's like, I can't live without, I'm not going to name any of the big integrators, ABC company, assisting us, making sure we meet the mission. So, talk about your viewpoints and how can we effectuate this goal of, outcomes-based contracting? Is it possible? Do we have the construct to be able to do that?
So again, this is where, whether it's FAR 2.0 or current FAR, there is a contract type for every scenario. And do people get comfortable with time and materials? Potentially they do. But look, if you look at a mainframe modernization task, you're talking about a system that is 40 years old, routinely imperfectly documented, and done in a way that is not consistent with modern times. You get sort of two choices on that. You can send in sort of an architect to decompose it, rebuild it, document it all so it's all perfectly done, and then you can go out to bid for it with an outcome of replace this with something modern, as a crude example.
Yep.
The alternative is you send in a T&M, sort of a design build from a construction background that says, look, I want you to learn as you go. I want you to document this thing and rewrite it at the same time. We need the data management plan, the inputs, the outputs. And that is going to be T&M because half the time people don't know how all of the connections work perfectly. And they'll do in their individual pieces, but to put the whole thing together and how it connects to all the downstream systems, that's where it just gets tough. So you can do that either way. And people have this idea of, hey, fixed price is the way because it puts all the risk on the contractor. It sure does. And when I was a contractor, I'll tell you one thing, Jeff, I made more money on fixed price jobs than I did on any other because you had to price that risk in. So if you're going to have a good program management team, which there are plenty in government that are holding people's feet to the fire, marking their milestones, and making sure that it's getting done on track, either approach can work. And in many ways, the unpredictability of the spaces that we deal with is relatively high, and you're better off on a T&M because guess what? All of this stuff that got ripped out by executive order or put back in by executive order this round, you're looking at change orders on that stuff on a fixed price or anything that's, out of scope. So I don't know, the contract management always needs to be there one way or another. And if it is, I think it can be done effectively either way. For the unknown stuff, I think T&M is the right choice. I think you can get there. And the chumminess of people, over time, guess what? Incumbents lose. You know why? Because their prices get inflated or they're not as chummy anymore. We have competitions every 5 years for a reason. It's to test for the fact, is Jeff still getting it done? Or can Erv actually win this time around? So I think there's enough checks and balances in there and there's enough competition that it can work either way. It's very alluring to say, oh, if only we had this perfect outcome-based thing. I worked in industry as well, and you know what? It's not perfectly outcome-based there either. You go to any large organization, you're going to have some series of those things because you are. There are some unknowns, and you got to pay as you go because you don't know what you're getting into. So it's there. I think it can work both ways. It just depends on the scenario.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many things out there, in the systems engineering, technical assistance. Like, how do you judge how good that CETA job is? Like, yeah, that airframe ended up being perfect and it traveled at X miles per hour like we wanted it to. It's like, was that the CETA advice that made that happen, or was that the manufacturer who made that happen? Like, who gets credit for that? Like, my quality of advice, the fact that I had it tested in the Nevada wind tunnel versus some other blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm talking in a space I really am not very familiar with, but I've touched over the many years. But I just know that, like, that's going to get really subjective. And are we going to start having other contractors hearing, hey, I heard that company got paid when that thing happened, but I didn't get paid. We're going to just have just another level of nonsense. And, is that post-award protestable? I don't know. But yeah, again, risk-based, do it, take a chance, try something out, maybe try it in a pilot program. Is this something we can really come up with a smart goal and be able to measure that contractor's effectiveness? I'm intrigued. I'd like to see it happen, but I don't think it fits everywhere. To your point, I totally love that. So speaking of, who come up with that ideas, it probably came out of the DOGE team, right? So what did you see DOGE in action there, GSA? Pretty active there?
Yeah, absolutely. Super active. And my headline for the DOGE effort, I would say, is opportunity missed or opportunity lost. There were many of the things that DOGE wanted to do. We'll just use the reduction in the workforce as one. The government reduces workforce regularly, as you alluded to earlier. There are methods and means of doing it that are well-traveled and well done. And certainly I was encouraging the DOGE team to say, hey, we'll just follow the process and it'll get you exactly where you want to go in basically the same time frame. And so that was never fast enough. And so you had things like the probationary folks being terminated. Well, now you've got a bunch of court cases clogging up the system. You've got a bunch of people on administrative leave who were essentially terminated. And those people on administrative leave, they could be doing productive work right now. And so it was one of those, if you had followed the regular Vera Visa RIF process, the early career folks would have lost because they were the youngest in the workforce, and that's the way the process works. So they would have been taken out, so to speak, anyway during a RIF, but they wanted to go so fast that they did it, and it was unfortunate because now you have sort of this, again, extra work being done to resolve that decision when in fact there was a method and mean to do it, and it would be done right now, and it would have been done more elegantly and with fewer court cases because you would have followed the process. So again, the idea behind it, certainly reasonable. No one's going to argue with becoming more efficient. The methods and means applied, at least in my experience, in that example, were just suboptimal, which was unfortunate and didn't achieve the goal. I think the other one that makes me a little bit more nervous is on the IT side. That's where, it was also a reduction. So, your development and enhancement funds that would keep your systems, modern and you're getting feedback from customers. Hey, we want this done. We want that done. A lot of that had to be reduced to hit some of the saving goals because you were going to sort of a lights on approach. And again, it's not an unreasonable thing to do for some systems because, hey, maybe you're going to sunset them anyway. But when you're taking a little bit more across the board approach, it's makes the future a little bit scarier. You can save money by not maintaining your car, but you've saved money for probably a couple years before it stops functioning because you didn't maintain it. And that's kind of where I get a little bit nervous. Yeah. And again, you're asking people to do so much more. The systems have been potentially less invested in. And then where do you have the money to do the AI capabilities that, again, if the budgets are reduced, how do you get that to make the... So it just always felt like there were some competing priorities in there. And it's going to be a very difficult thing to reconcile. But maybe the rebuild period is right behind us, and they're going to start investing aggressively again, which at some point I think is going to need to happen. Or you're going to have saved a lot of money for a few years, and then you're going to wake up one day and your car's not going to start because you didn't do the required steps along the way. So that's where I see the sort of the missed opportunity that could have been still handled effectively or more effectively, quite frankly, than it was. But hey, they got some things done. I'll give them credit for that, and they were big. So it's I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there.
I think just like any reformation project that goes on through the government, nothing has been done quite at this scale, but it's happened at the agency and within agencies and branch levels that this kind of stuff happens, consolidation of operations, that kind of stuff. Nothing happens perfectly, right? Whether it's an ERP change or whether it's a, like you said, mainframe conversion project. There's nothing easy about it, and and so to your point, you're the IT infrastructure. We'd be remiss in not mentioning the cyber risks related to that. It's like you're going to cut all these things off. All right, who now has access to our information? Especially, everyone knows we rely even more on technologically based decisions. That sounds like something someone's going to pick up on wanting to target. Right. So hopefully the administration is taking that into consideration. I'm not going to try to be a cyber expert. So what do you think? So where does DOGE go from here? Geez, we're good 6 months in. What's the future of DOGE? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm a bit curious myself. When I talked about the rebuild period, that was a discussion early on that, hey, you need to go through this restructuring process, and then there will be the rebuild and reinvestment. So I am hopeful that is where it goes, because I think it needs to. You cannot cut forever. And oh, by the way, there was no assessment done up front to decide if Erv was efficient or not. And so Again, it was a little bit more across the board, which is challenging. And at GSA, we really had to make some trade-offs to say, hey, this is more important than that. But going forward, I really hope the rebuild period is there. I don't know how much farther it's going to go in terms of the cost cutting. And when you get right down to it, the federal workforce is probably 5 or 6% of the whole budget. And so
small.
It's not a insignificant thing, and you need to save where you can. So I don't diminish that at all. It's just a place where it's been reduced over the years, whether it's A76 or whatever. And again, talking about insourcing technical talent now with the OMB memo that came out today, I just kind of scratch my head a little bit and say, okay, I just want to see how they're going to reconcile it. And again, I hope the build back period is there, and they start to be able to hire again and bring in some great talent to help make this happen, because it's tough sledding.
Yeah, no, I heard lots of hiring freezes internally. So you're left with only one choice. And here we are, the middle of the fourth quarter. I don't think there's much of a choice. You're going to have to contract it out and do it fast to bridge that gap and making sure things, making sure mission happens. I mean, just can't avoid that. There's no excuses. And, we saw a unique rescission just happen. So that was a big deal. But still lots of money out there, lots of discretionary money that still needs to be spent. That took a lot of time to free up. And here we are, when this airs, you still have a little over a month to get that money spent. And very rare an agency who's like, you know what, we don't need to spend all that. That big deficit could really use a hang. Now, most agencies are going to reprogram and figure out needs in order to solve it. Anyways, let's move over to some more specific GSA related issues. It seems more important than ever for contractors to have strong relationships with procurement officers within the GSA. Any advice how we can find the Ervs the current Ervs at GSA, so we can start building those relationships again? I'm sure a lot of people listening will want to hear this.
Yeah. So the relationship with the contracting officer is key. And, I always tell folks on both sides, especially in my last job, we'd be out there in the public saying, look, it's a team sport. I have enough stories of contractors being imperfect in the relationship as I do contracting officers being blamed for being imperfect in the relationship. And so, one of the moves is to create a little bit more of the level playing field of this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. Everybody knows what the rules are. And then we spent a fair amount of time with some of the industry consultants who help people get on schedule and manage those contracts. And for a long time, that group was sort of considered negatively, I would think, by GSA a little bit. But as I got to know more and more of them, I found it to be a really concentrated source of information because they do it every day. It's not a frustrated business owner who can't upload their SIP file because it's an old, difficult system. This is a true expert in the field who knows what they're doing because they've done it 100 times. So trying to change that attitude a little bit was helpful to us and to our contracting officers. Because it was just useful to get their input. We actually made changes and we told them sometimes, no, we weren't. We did things they didn't like every time, but we always listened. And I think that was the key. So I'm not saying everyone needs to run out and get a consultant tomorrow, but understanding what you're doing is important because so often, you have a new startup that's trying to get their schedule and they're so far out of their element in terms of the knowledge that it takes to do federal contracting. And should it be easier? Sure. But you still have to sign up to 33 certs and reps potentially that you may not even fully grasp what they all are. And the clauses, the forms, the input. So I would say, trying to create that balanced, respectful relationship. And then making sure that you're well prepared. Those contracting officers aren't there to help you figure out how to get through that process. I wish they were. I wish we had enough people to do that. It's just not going to happen anymore. Quite frankly, there's going to be more rejections because they're just not going to have time to provide the help that they used to, or the IOA community and others, because there just aren't the people left to do it. So the order is going to get a little bit higher for the contracting officer, but if you submit a high quality proposal, it'll go to the intake desk. Someone there will help you. You will get a point of contact, and if you work with them, they'll tend to work with you. But if you submit a 10%, product, don't expect them to take you 90. If you submit a 90% project, they'll probably work with you to get to the 10 because it's in everyone's mutual interest just to get these things across the finish line, if they're acceptable. So there's a little bit of a balance, but you're going to get a name, you're going to get a number for your file, and you're going to use that to go through the process. And that's the way it is. Once you get your contract awarded, your contracting officer is assigned, and certainly striking a relationship with them to make sure that, hey, you understand this is what I'm doing, or this is what I want to do. I have not met many contracting officers who were not willing to work with people who had put in a diligent level of effort on their side. Too many folks who expect this to be easy, and it's not. And it's just because you're going back to public policy, competition, fairness. There's just layers and layers and layers of stuff here. It's not just, hey, Jeff, I got a deal for you. Okay, sweet, I'll take it. It's just not done that way. So it's tough sledding there.
Yeah, no, I think you have the line that all beautiful. I really appreciate that perspective. Yeah, you can't go it alone, especially if you're new. There's a lot of industry groups out there that can help a bit. But yeah, finding those consultants who, trying to, GSA doesn't have quite the equivalent of the, what used to be called PTACs, now called Apex accelerators. I don't know if those folks really have much insight into getting into GSA. I mean, can't hurt. It's a free resource, and they may know the right people. But at the end of the day, yeah, you gotta know the right things to say and how to complete a application, whatever it may be. It's just like getting your small business certification. You think about becoming an 8A or anything else, like doing that totally on your own. I mean, there's good instructions out there. I'm sure at this point there are YouTube videos, but yeah, getting the right help is great advice. Yes, and yes, I'm a consultant. I get it, but at the same time, I just see how difficult it is getting that extra assist.
Hey, Jeff, my favorite story on that.
Please.
A contractor, he's the actual manufacturer in the United States, Boyd Eiflin, he made absorbent products that was an alternative to clay. And I asked him one time, I said, Boyd, why are you using a consultant to help you with this process? He said, Erv, I manufacture oil absorbent products. I don't do contract administration. I outsource the things that I don't do. And that was kind of the moment that it was like, okay, I get that, and they were probably getting close to be big enough to have their own person do it for them, but they were still a little bit earlier in the game. Sure. And it made sense to do it. And so I was like, okay, I get that. And there's an answer for everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I love it. So do you have any advice? Like if you want to do business with the government or want to expand doing business with the government, if you're not on a multiple award schedule, is that what you're pursuing? And do you try an on-ramp to Oasis? There's somewhere else people should be going. Any thoughts on that topic?
Sure. A big broad scope. I think the IDIQ landscape supported by the OMB memo today is going to get smaller. And you're going to end up with a series of GWACs and then the multiple award schedules program. So the three big options as I see it, you could have status quo, which, hey, as an MBA student, you always have to do status quo. And that's where you're probably going to have some series of the GWACs, probably fewer going forward, but some set of them, plus the multiple award schedules, because, it's sort of BPAs versus cost type contracting. Too crude of a thing, but let's just say that's what it is. There's other authorities and whatnot in there that may come available. Going forward, you could see a potential product services split, products going to schedules, which is its foundation, services going to the max and GWACs, or you could see a full consolidation to schedules. Those are the three giant scenarios as I see the world. And the mass one is probably the most interesting, but it also requires a fair amount of work because there's some legislative stuff that would have to take place. But with the current administration's focus and they're willing to put the juice into it, that's a plausible alternative. So as a landscape view of IDIQ contracting, I think that's what we're going to be looking at going forward in those spaces. The OMB memo outlines, hey, if you're going to do submarines, that's not going to be on a MAC or GWAC anytime soon. So that'll still be agency specific, but common goods and services makes sense. The other thing I would tell people is know what the government is buying. So we would have folks in my last job that would have catalogs that were 6 million items. The current count is less than 400,000 of items actually purchased in the market. So when you produce 6 million, again, you're creating a phenomenal amount of work for people who can't price some of that stuff because we don't have the pricing histories to do it. And then you're wondering, well, hey, my business is going down, but GSA's business is going up. What's going on? Well, you're missing part of the market. If you're in office supplies today, it's going to be tough going because there will be fewer people consuming office supplies, period. That's just the way it is. Even back to work and everything else, there just are fewer humans buying those things. However, with some increase in military activity, those items will see increases, obviously. And so when you get these published lists of known purchased items, if you're not taking advantage of that, it's a mistake on your part because you may not be offering the right products and you may not be offering them at the right prices. So that's such a huge thing. The second piece is knowing more about the customers you're going after. Too often I would hear the consultant answer when I would say, hey, Jeff, what do you offer? Well, Erv, what do you need? And as much as I appreciate that answer, because I was a consultant at one time and I probably need it, being more specific about what you do and who you are going to target because you know your offering fits with their need. That's what's going to have to happen going forward. If you're out there responding to RFPs, I'm not saying you can't win with no knowledge, but it's going to be tough because, without having a little bit more about the prior performance or prior statement of work or what's going on in that area or location, it is going to be tough to compete because you have people who do know those things and their proposals are going to be better. So I was always and am an advocate of a more focused strategy of saying, okay, we're going to go after an agency or a location because that's where, if I'm in Huntsville, Alabama, I get it. There's a lot to do in Huntsville. And if I'm physically there, you're part of that community, you're part of that network. You could compete, I think, for work in that space, assuming you had the capabilities. But in other areas, you may say, hey, I'm going to be Army guy because I know the Army super well, and then, go after that space. So that the focus is certainly, I think, a very important thing because it just increases your success rate and it brings your knowledge to bear for known problems that need fixing.
So what you're alluding to, you still subscribe in this new era of acquisitions that you should be looking to talking with the end customer. So if you want to sell your widgets to the Army, you still push, go talk to your end user. Don't talk to the GSA person who's in charge of that category of who, that falls under. Is that where you're getting at still?
You could do a little bit of both because the category managers, what they have is what is being purchased at what quantities. So you need to make sure that your offering is correct for the broader market. But in the end, yes, if you're going to do work with Army, you need to get to the conferences, you need to get to the locations, you need to meet with those folks because you have to have a better understanding of what they do. The statements of work are always good. The requirements are always good. You certainly can submit proposals in that way. But having some more knowledge of what the end user needs, it just allows you to prepare a more effective proposal, in my view. It also gives you some sense of what you're going to be dealing with. If I've talked to Jeff a few times, I know Jeff has a certain command of his topics, where when I talk to Erv, I'm a little more nervous. So with Jeff, I may be able to, give a better price for because I have more certainty. Or when I'm dealing with Erv, I may have to pad a little bit because there's a little bit more uncertainty. And those are just the realities that go along with it. And it's the decisions people make every day.
So you see industry days will continue. Maybe, Army has an industry day and there's going to be a couple more representatives from GSA there just to hear what's being presented. So that's interesting. Let's talk about the multiple award schedules. That's a topic I want to get to. A challenge with the multiple award schedules is, trying to prove out your most favorable price. To your most popular customer, making sure that you issue a price to the government that is no less favorable than you issue to a commercial customer. And GSA developed this new program related to transactional data reporting, or TDR for short. Where do you see the future for that? It's been a big topic for a while. The Inspector General at GSA has been really focused on how well it does not work. So I don't know if you can provide some perspective on where the future of TDR is.
Sure. I think the future is bright and it has to stay. When they consolidate the contracts within GSA, they need to do TDR on everything because the old most favored customer pricing, it just didn't work. At the time it was created, we did not have the capabilities that we have today. And so you were saying, hey, give me your catalog, give me 10% off. Yep. And that's a good price because that's what the market sort of said and prevailed. Today, those are all known things. I'm not looking at a whole catalog anymore. I don't want to price that way. I want to know that this thing should cost $1 because that's what the market is paying. And anyone who's offering it for less than $1 is welcome to play in this space and then let competition prevail. If GSA goes fully the next step and says these are the only version of this pen, and of course it would be from NIB, then we would know those prices, and people are competing for the markup at that point to be the most competitive market for the people who can deliver at the highest rate. The trouble with CSP is you did it at the catalog level, but not knowing what prices were being paid across the market, you ended up with incredible variability in the catalogs. People didn't care for Advantage because they would say, hey, how can this thing cost $10 here and $35 here, and they're both fair and reasonable, and it's the identical item? So the TDR will shrink that gap down, make it more competitive. People will know what the quantities are, where they're going, so they can price more effectively. And I think more importantly, Jeff, it also says, hey, if this thing is out there, is there an alternative that I can provide that's an even better deal? And so if you're in a tools space, for example, most craftsmen are going to want, or artisans are going to want high-end tools, say a Snap-on as an example. And if you find something that is equivalent to a Snap-on, which most artisans would say that's heresy, but there could be some out there. And if people would enter that market, maybe make it in America or other things like that, that would make it competitive with that item, that's where the real power starts to come in. And oh, by the way, in the commercial platform space, GSA was getting the same style of TDR reporting from them so that they could see what was being purchased over there. Am I getting a good deal? Are these things going head to head on a comparison, or is everybody going to commercial platform to buy things that they may not be able to get on schedule because of the regulation associated with it? So, commercial platform, not sure how much you know about it, but it's under 10,000.
More. Yeah.
It's under 10,000 only, which is micro purchase. So there are a few rules in general. That's why that program works. When you get the schedules, there are more rules because it is a higher dollar purchase that you can make. So think about a Made in America, Trade Act agreement compliance. Those styles of things are not as much a part of the commercial platform because it's only under 10,000, and that's the way micro purchase works. On the schedule side, you're going to see those restrictions come into play. So the items there may be more expensive, but it's for a reason, because those restrictions are there. So,
got to price the risk in. Yeah.
Well, and do you want the Trade Act compliance and the other things, or are you going to let it go Wild West and you're not exactly sure what you're getting, if it's counterfeit or, gray market items or whatever?
China part. Yeah.
Again, those are sort of the trade-offs that you're making. In the more controlled environment, there's a little bit more security. In the more commercial environment, there's less of that. And it can seem okay until that mouse you purchase, when you plug it into your laptop, has something that's nefarious, and you have issues that way. So it's the trade-offs you want to make and the risks you're willing to take. But it's in the end, getting that transactional data. It is done nothing but improve pricing, improve process, inform industry, and make the whole thing better. It needs to continue. And my last point on that, in the early days, the IG was correct in their assessment. The data we were getting was imperfect, and we were not using it in as robust a fashion as we should have. Today, the policy team and the contracting officers have worked diligently to prove you're 90% plus on the line item accuracy for products, and they're working their way up the chain on services. And it is built into the pricing algorithm that is used for products today. So those initial complaints were valid. They have been very reasonably addressed and produce a better result. And going forward, it is the right answer, because we should know what we're buying. We should be able to publish that so people can get us better prices. And we should publish it so we can come up with alternatives that may be better downstream. So it's an absolute winner, and in my mind, a slam dunk going forward. And it's been proven that the old CSP, or most favored customer pricing, it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore. And we need to move forward in a positive way. And again, both sides need to play ball there.
Yeah, I love it. So you're getting to a TDR database similar to the GSA Calc tool that's out there, where you can easily compare the GSA Advantage prices of labor across the board, and then sort of mix that in with USA spending. Sort of like, we've bought 3 trillion pencils, and here are the various prices by vendor that we paid for each of them. And so, what about these types of pencils can you do that's better and, make it a better value for the government? Wow, that'd be a serious paradigm shift to be able to see things like that and be able to say, all right, you want me to build you the better animal? Here's how I can do that. I'm very intrigued. See where that could go. I like it.
And that's where I think the OneGov strategy has legs, because OneGov combined with TDR, you're going to get more demand knowledge going through, more price knowledge going through, and you're going to be able to feed it back out to make a more competitive market. I mean, it's such a good idea. It can be done. It is being done, and it needs to continue, because for what the administration's trying to do, that is a good, solid path to actually get there. That's not pie in the sky stuff. It is very tangible, very real, and it's very consistent with the strategy. So it's actually one of my favorites. I like that.
And very interesting. So like I can see that going down the road of the whole commercial item determinations and the challenges around there. It's like, yeah, we've determined this kind of widget that's commercial. So why don't, we can show we've sold it in multiple places, multiple vendors now have it. Like, stop it. Stop making us redo commercial item determination every time I have to respond to a solicitation. It's wasting everyone's time.
Agreed.
And now you have this published list. You could do the price analysis part of it, which everyone on the inside complains about, saying, how the heck do I do that? Can you give me the cost data? It's like, stop it. That's the whole point of the commercial item determinations. Yeah, so I love it. So here's where I wanted to go earlier. Now my brain decided to unlock itself. So with that recent OMB memo, with so much consolidations, are we going to start shutting out a lot of smaller businesses? Are we stifle competition? We're going to get to more of an oligopoly type situation where just certain integrators are keep buying up certain specialty manufacturers or services, that we're only going to have like 10 manufacturers and 10 service providers. Maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but I don't know. If we're going to consolidate here in the government, why is industry going to want to stay so fragmented, for lack of a better term?
No, I mean, clearly we've seen that over the last 20 years, the defense sector, as, the different airframe manufacturers have consolidated, and, the weapon side. I think with the integrators, you're probably, at the systems integrators, you're probably looking at a somewhat similar lane, possibly, because if we're going to stay on the path we are today, which is more and more consolidation of bigger and bigger things, and we're not worried about bundling, or we're not worrying about consolidation from a contracting term perspective, yeah, I do see it going that way, because you're going to have the largest firms in the world servicing the federal market, because it's the largest buyer in the world. Do I think there's space in there for more on the small business side? Yeah, I do. This is a market by market approach, though, Jeff, because in some markets, again, do I need a 500 distributors of a given product? Probably not, because it's the identical thing. Now, if you said, do I need 500 manufacturers? Maybe not. But if you're just a reseller, I don't know how many of those I need to make an efficient marketplace, because there's only going to be so many that can do it at scale, at price, at delivery. The services space gets a little bit different. But I think, yeah, in some sectors, it's going to go the way you're describing, because it's sort of the natural order of things. Whether that's right or wrong is difficult to understand, but it's sort of the way that it's going under the environment that we're in. If you can continue to consolidate, you can grow more because you control more. And I don't know how you get out of that. And that's not just the government sector. I mean, any of the large IT firms, they buy up the little guys or little ladies quickly, because they want the technology and they want to make it better for themselves. So I think until something changes on the scale side of it, I don't know how you go around that avenue, because there are giant players out there that know what they want, and they're going to buy it to be better for themselves.
Yeah. Amazon and Walmart did not grow purely organically. There's bought lots of small players along the way to get to where they are today. So I still think, and we alluded to it, I mean, there's going to be plenty of agencies out there that truly have the purple squirrel type needs, where you need to had really innovative, really in that space, concentrated and understanding unique needs, Intel or other classified things that only so many people know about, and you still have plenty of room to do that and sell that back and saying, all right, well, this is where it's not so commercial and can't be bought on a consolidated basis. But once you develop it under that secret umbrella, it's the whole, what they invented for the moon landing. Like, a lot of that stuff ended up being commercially available products. So
Right.
think about it that way. I think that'll still, in theory, happen, and hopefully still happen. And they're going to have to need those kinds of smaller, unique, niche, all those companies. Still going to be a space for it, whether or not, back to your public policy point, whether or not we need specific subcontract goals and specific designations of companies in order to get to that. I don't know. I think that's a fair thing to think about. Anywho, Erv, I think we've covered a lot of great areas today, from talking about the risk taking that needs to happen within the federal procurement system. This RFO is going to really change, in theory, what the rules are, but like, in order to actually get the right widget, the right service, the right hands at the right price, it's got to be how well that the workforce is trained and how well they understand what it takes to evaluate risk and get that in the right hands at that right time. We talked about how public policy, we talk a lot about that and how that gets in the way. Like, no matter what, until you have those 33 reps and certs, until that gets, slimmed down, if and when, and probably not, there's going to be a pricing premium that we have to expect to pay as a federal buyer for certain products and services. And there's a certain level of, call it the bureaucracy, call it the challenges that cause that gap between having a need and having it filled. It's just going to take some time. And then, the future of DOGE, they're not going to stop. The rubber man may come back, and there's going to be an opportunity for folks to fill in the overcuts, let's call it that, and to fill in those gaps. And so you're seeing that, we're going to have to hire up quickly to address that in-between time between, the huge knowledge gap that we just lost, and when technology truly gets up to that level, the robust efficiency level that you can start trusting it more. I don't know if we can fully trust it, whether or not we're going to get to the Skynet, thinking on its own. I mean, it's a little scary for us, but, whether or not that happens in our lifetime, to be thinking. So lots going on, lots of great perspectives. So Erv, now what? Now you're out of public service and back on your own. Erv, you're now the principal of your own company, Curve Services, LLC. How can you help? Are you helping the government? Are you helping companies? Both?
For today, I'm focused on helping companies. So, getting their strategies together, make sure they're selling the right stuff, the right prices. They understand the market, the customers, and how to go to market. And so it's interesting to be back on this side of the fence. I had to dust off a few skills from the past, although I was in marketing and sales for so long at GSA, it's not much to dust off. But it's the same thing I'm advising them. I'm staying focused in the spaces that I'm the best at, which is going to be GSA-related activities, and then some of the supply chain services stuff that we've talked about today. But I really appreciate being here. And I'll give you one last little tidbit for your viewership.
Please.
There is a group, although they're substantially fewer than they used to be, called Customer Service Directors and National Account Managers at GSA. They were one of the groups that I led in my time at Case. And they are the people, boots on the ground, that are working with agencies every day to figure out how GSA can better support those agencies. They're sort of a secret weapon if you can see them at a conference or meet up with them as a vendor or contractor, and strike up a relationship with them. And sometimes they can be really helpful to say, hey, we're going to do market research on a given topic. Would you like to participate? Or do you know about MRAS or some of the other things that are out there that are what was I before at GSA, trying to help partner up the right federal agency with the right solution, and those folks are really some of the best at it. And so if you can find them, for however many are still there, they're super helpful, and they're really, really great people that do a good job every day, and they can certainly be help from the contractor community. And if you can't find them, hey, call us over here at Curb Services.
Ah, there you go. So yeah, so I guess they're not so easily findable. You can't just go on GSA's website and look up the customer service directors, or you can?
You can. I'm pretty sure if you go to gsa.gov/CSD, or /NAM maybe, or maybe it's been changed, but the directory was there, and they would give you the account or region that they were assigned to before. I'm not sure how that map has changed, but it did exist at one time.
There you go. Oh, there you go. Or thank you. I appreciate you making sure you get that in there. So this has been really fabulous. We're really fortunate to have you here, Erv. Folks, yeah, reach out to Erv. He's got a lot of great experience. You want to get into GSA, you want to get into another agency, but you know that GSA is involved. I mean, you see the number of agencies that are moving their procurement functions over to GSA. So it sounds like Erv might have the inside views for you. So great session today. You know, let us know, for those who listen, please comment within LinkedIn. Connect with us on LinkedIn. You know, we would love to hear feedback on this episode. You know, what else can, VisibleThread bring to you in terms of more content? We're really anxious to really address the more current concerns going on in the market today. I know the rate of change has never been faster than I remember. So we're all in this together. We're all learning this together. As those FAR gets published, believe it or not, that's the first time we're also seeing it here, the experts in here. So we're all figuring this all out together. So keep listening in and getting these good tidbits. So Erv, thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate all for listening, and we'll see you the next time around. Thanks, everyone.